Let's assume that you are a PM working at Amazon on the seller side, and there's a dashboard available for sellers called Seller Central, which, let's say in an hypothetical situation, exists only in a web format, and you have to come up with the first version of the app for this dashboard. How would you go ahead with this? Okay, so first of all, let's discuss the typical structure that we have to use. So first is what we have to understand. What is the feature or what is the product that we are talking about? What are the typical use cases that get solved from the product? Basically, everything that's related to the product. Second is why. So why is where we have to understand. Why would a company invest in creating that product or that feature? Okay. So this is where we have to identify what could be the business objectives or goal behind launching that product. Then third is basically to understand the who and why. So the first is basically identify who are my users. Second is I would be segmenting those users. And third is identify the use cases. So there are different use cases for these users or these segments that we have identified. And also when we say segmentation, so one segmentation is via demography. This is pretty much straightforward, but many times a case requires segmentation by some other attributes as well. Okay, so it could be segmentation by behavior, it could be segmentation by, let's say if we are discussing a B2B case, it could be segmentation by, let's say, size of business or anything. And then once we've discussed these use cases, we would also spend a little time on why would a user use this product. Then what we do is we basically prioritize which segment we would be solving for. So we have different segments of users. Now we try and identify that, okay, this is my largest segment. This is a segment that has, let's say, a lot of pain points, and solving the pain point of this segment makes sense. And this is sort of targeting. So between segmentation and journey, we write prioritization of a segment. Then we discuss the journey mapping. So when we discuss the journey mapping, what we do is typically we create phase of journey. Okay, and on this axis, what's the objective or the current process of the user, and what are the pain points in the phases. So this is how we create our journey. And these pain points that we identify in these phases, this is what leads us to our next step, which is solution. Okay, and once we have brainstormed few solutions, that's where we discuss metrics and prioritization. These metrics have to tie back to your why, which is basically the business objectives. So this is the rough structure that we would be using. Okay, let's move ahead and discuss the first case. We need to design first version of Amazon Seller Central dashboard app. Okay, so first we start with what is Seller Central dashboard. Amazon is an e-commerce platform where we have users and we have sellers. Now Seller Central dashboard is a portal which is currently available in web format, which helps the sellers to sell on Amazon, which means this web portal helps them with all the things that a seller needs. So it could be creating listing of product, managing inventory, managing orders, checking with what orders I have received, packing that order and marking that order shipped. It could be managing customer questions, customer reviews, as well as managing any escalation from Amazon support team, which a customer might have raising any issue with the support team. or basically, seeing what are my statement of account, how much have I sold on Amazon, what's the pending amount that I'll be receiving from Amazon, and so on. So there are all these multiple use cases that Seller Central dashboard has for the seller. So that's the what part. Now next is why. So this is where we'll try to identify the objective. Now the question is that we need to come up with a first version of the app. Okay. So first we have to understand, why does an app make sense? Obviously, like we discussed, Seller Central dashboard in its current format is a web portal. Okay. And if we are thinking of creating an app, it can be accessed on the go. There would be few time critical information, or there could be few time critical actions that the Amazon would want its seller to take. So that is where an app would have an advantage over a web portal. So the objective is obviously mobility, providing info on the go. And why is it important? Because there would be few action or information which are time critical. So this is where we identify what could be the incentive. Okay. Now next is users. Obviously our users are sellers who are selling on Amazon. Okay. Now what are the different type of sellers that sell on Amazon? When we say segmentation, we need to do segmentation on a particular attribute. Okay. So in this case, our attribute, like we discussed, would be size of seller. For example, there could be few sellers who sell very niche products, and their turnover could be less than N amount on yearly turnover, and they sell very niche product, and they manage everything, let's say a small store, or keep their inventory in their home itself and manage everything by themselves. Okay. Then there would be a medium seller, which we can identify again having turnover between this and this amount. They would be having a small go down where they might be having 1 to 2 people to help them with all the order management, like picking of the product, packing that product, marking that shipped, and managing everything. And they might also have someone to help them with their Seller Central dashboard. So either they themselves would be using the dashboard, or someone would be using the dashboard. The third kind of sellers are the large sellers. And next is the brand sellers. So large sellers are those, let's say those t-shirt manufacturers or sari manufacturers who manufacture and sell their product not only on Amazon but also on wholesale markets to different retailers. So they'll have a large facility where they'll have a couple of resources to help them manage their e-commerce sale. Okay, so they'll have probably 3 to 4 people helping them. And then there are brand sellers. So for example, Nike would sell, or Hindustan Unilever or P&G would be selling on Amazon. So these are my brand sellers. Okay, so these are different type of sellers that we identify. Now we have to basically prioritize the segment. For which seller does this app make sense? Obviously, if we look at these categories, so these might be a segment where the sellers would have dedicated resources managing everything on Seller Central to help them sell on Amazon. However, this is where the seller themselves would be doing a lot of managing their day-to-day operations, which means they would not have access to Seller Central dashboard all the time. They might be traveling somewhere, they might be going for meetings, or they might be doing anything which is related to their business, which means there could be something which is time critical, which they might be missing, or there might be a delay. So this is where we'll prioritize, where I'll say that I'll be focusing on small to medium seller. And when we say a user segment, we let the interviewer know that this is the data point by which we would be identifying this particular segment. Yeah. So we have discussed the what, we have discussed the why, we have discussed the users, the segmentation, what's the use case. We have prioritized the segment, one particular cohort. Now we'll be doing a journey mapping. So journey of the seller starts with a registration on Amazon, creating the listing of products, inventory management, marking that this particular product is in stock, this is out of stock, and this and basically managing order. This would go hand in hand. Once the order is received, then they would be packing or processing the order, and then they would be shipping the order. Then they'll be managing any questions or reviews, any escalation which they can themselves make, or from the support team. So returns is also something which will come over here. And then finally, statement of account, to understand what's the amount that they have received versus what is pending. Now, in each of these phases, we since our objective was to present time critical information, in each of these phases we'll identify where would an app make sense versus where would a dashboard make sense. Okay, registration on Amazon, this is something where the app makes sense. Creating listing of products, this is something which can be done on the app. However, a web would have an upper hand on the app. Why? Because when I'm creating a listing, I need to fill so many different fields of product description, product I have to mark the product category. I need to upload a photo. Now obviously Amazon expects some basic quality when clicking and uploading photo of that image, that product, which means I might do some editing before uploading a photo. And typically all these editing is done via Photoshop or some other tools. And then I would be basically managing a gallery of these photos where I would be uploading the photo. So this is a very complex or a tedious process. We would not expect all these to go into the first version of the app. Okay, so we might not choose this one. Okay. Next is inventory management and order management. I mean, both of them. This is something which makes sense for the app. Why? Let's say there were only 5 pieces of a product left, and out of that 5 pieces, let's say somehow 2 pieces were expired and something happened, which means that the seller would have to mark that product out of stock. They might need to mark on an urgent basis, else they'll receive an order, and since the product won't be out in stock, which means they'll have to cancel, which is sort of a negative flow for their experience on Amazon as well as the customer as well. So this is something which sort of makes sense. Processing orders, obviously, when they receive a order, there is a ETA within which they have to process the order. Because if they do not process and ship the order over here, that means the whatever is a promise time to the customer, that might get decreased, and there might be some sort of penalty which Amazon levies due to any delays over here. So this is something which is very time critical, because as soon as they receive an order, they have so much amount of time before they can mark the item as order ready to be shipped. Because once they mark the order as ready to ship, then probably if the Amazon transport team is working in that order, they'll come and pick the courier. So this is where the app makes sense. Now questions and reviews. Let's say I'm looking to purchase a phone charger for my OnePlus device, and I'm looking at one of the product, and I'm not sure whether that would work with my device or not. So naturally, I would ask question from the seller. I would expect to get answer probably in some time, because let's say if I get answer within 10 minutes or 15 minutes, I might also purchase that product. Versus if I get answer probably later in the night that day, by that time I might already have purchased from some other item on Amazon or from totally other platform. So this is again very time critical, and this makes sense. Same goes for support team, because let's say a customer has raised something, and the support team needs to check that with the seller. obviously lesser is the time to respond back to the customer, more is the NPS score for that interaction. And then checking the statement of accounts. This is not a time critical information, but yeah, this is something which they might want to check. So again, this is sort of equal for both app and web. Now this is the journey mapping. Now let's try and identify what use cases make sense and basis on what's a pain point. So registration on Amazon, this makes sense, but again, the frequency is less, which means that again, we might not want to choose this for the first version of the app. So we'll not be taking this. Then second is obviously creating of the listing. This we already told that we wouldn't be taking, because at least for the first version, web makes more sense. Then marking any inventory out of stock. This is something which makes sense. But again, the frequency is less. If we compare these two cases, the frequency is much more of this use case than this. So we might also not consider this in our first version. This is something which is super important. This makes sense for the app. Questions and reviews, very important. Escalation to support team, again important. And statement of accounts. This is something which frequency is less, but yeah, we'll see about this thing. Okay. So this is where we created a journey mapping and we identified the pain points and picked up which things to consider. So next we write down a solution. So as a first version of the app, we might design our app in the sense where we have a nav bar over here, which provides quick links to important sections. So for example, any questions that user asks, we can show, okay, there is one pending question, or any reviews that the user receive, or any escalation. So these could be quick links. Okay. Yeah. And in the homepage, we'll design the homepage in a way where the most frequently accessed information remains on the top, versus as we go down the real estate, we pick and choose those segments which have lower frequency. So over here we'll see all sort of upcoming order which is pending for processing. So we might design the screen in form of action screen, and we put all the use cases on which the user has to take action on something. Yeah. So this is how we sort of design the solution. So next is we discuss the metrics. Now, when we are discussing the metrics, we have to understand that there are two levels of metric. The first level of metrics is something that goes with the user funnel. And second is that goes with business objectives. Okay. So user funnel is, we track those metrics which tie tightly with the steps that user takes in the app. Okay. Like what's the percentage of people who go from here to here versus here to here, So for example, in our case, we can say percentage of sellers signed into the app, percentage of sellers who took some action in the app. And our L1 metrics would be everything that ties back to the business objective. So our L1 metric would be whether the turnaround time for answering customer questions or responding to customer reviews or responding to support escalations, whether there has been any improvement in this turnaround time or not. Again, only for the specific cohort. Yeah. Because if there isn't any improvement, that means there's something which is wrong and we might have to solve that thing first. Right. Second thing is whether the ETA breach in the order. So the metric where we'll need to track here is percentage of orders or percentage of instances where there was a breach and that has gone down. Over here also we'll see percentage of order where ETA was breached, ETA breach where there was a delay in processing. whether that has gone down or not. So this is the metric we'll be tracking on L1. This is how we'll be doing, and we have to ensure that whenever we talk about metrics, it's preferable to talk about metrics in ratio or percentages format, because that sort of gives a complete picture about any feature.